Hey, Picasso's freestyle. Let's do it. Hey, eating couple wings with a couple kings. They're my favorite things. Hey. That's all I got. I'm not a good freestyle rapper. Wait, hold on. Let me think for a second.
Folks, welcome in to another edition of the Crowd Assist Podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin Masseri, here with Merekat to break down the Bills-Jets game. A hopefully redemption game here for Buffalo. Merekat, how you feeling today? Give us the general consensus of what's going on in your mind and kind of what you'd like to see.
All I can think about right now is the bounce back that the Bills need in this game. After that Jaguars loss last week, we're not thinking about it anymore. We move on from that. And we got another punching bag opponent that's supposed to be in the Jets, a division foe who has some good wins under their belts this year. And Mike White, all those storylines, we talked about them this week earlier on the Crowd Assist podcast. But, there are reasons to kind of be worried in this game. But I'm not. I'm going in confident. I think Josh Allen, the offense, is going to put up a lot of points. I'm looking at 30-plus points today and get the Bills a much-needed win, kind of get the offense right. And these injuries, stuff popping up on the defense, they need to overcome that for the defense.
For sure. And then we got to take a look at the COVID. I want to ask your questions real quick on Star Lotulelei coming up with COVID-19 here today. I saw Brandon Bryant on the plane. I was going to tweet it, but I didn't want to get into a weird, no, he's not playing kind of. I just didn't want to get in a scenario, but I saw him in pictures getting on the plane, and I was like, that's weird. He's actually inactive today. Merekat, what's going on with that? Clearly they knew about it. They brought Brandon Bryant to New York. Were they waiting on a second test? Star Lotulelei couldn't have been on the plane. Did they just have more time to not have to announce it yet? Like most teams had to announce it yesterday, like Ben Roethlisberger, et cetera. What's your opinion on what happened with Star Lotulelei and an hour before kickoff?
I honestly don't know, because I don't know if that's something where they can get in trouble if they knew he had COVID a few days ago, didn't announce it, and they were hoping to get, a second consecutive negative test today. He could go. Turns out he has it. I don't know, because Brandon Bryant getting on that plane, they had to have, at least suspected Star wasn't going to go today. And it's one of those moves where, Star has had a major impact this year. He's actually got some decent numbers in the pass rush. He's got tackles for a loss. He's been disruptive, and he's the big reason we're seeing this incredible season so far out of Ed Oliver that we've all been waiting for. Now today, right after, the Justin Zimmer news, Zimmer being out on IR now for the year, terrible news for him. You hate to see it. He was a fan favorite.
Would have had a huge game today.
Would have been in a prime position today for a massive game. And so those happening in succession, there's reason to be worried. But this is also, a coaching staff and a roster that carries a lot of defensive linemen and a lot of versatile guys. So without Star, we might see him kind of not really flash today. He's going to need to step up. Obviously, a lot of Vernon Butler. Harrison Phillips, though, is going to be that guy, that one tech we might need in certain situations where Harrison Phillips needs to have a day, because Michael Carter has been good on the ground for this Jets offense, even though I suspect we see mostly Mike White. The defensive line, though, I'm not too worried.
Yeah, what's interesting is an FAO bot today. He's active. Boogie Baxham's finally active. It took an IR and a COVID situation to get them both active here. Rolling 3 defensive tackles, an interesting one, and a bunch of defensive ends. So we're going to obviously see a bunch of kick-ins and passing downs especially. You're probably only going to see early downs worth of Harrison Phillips and probably later downs of Butler, and then obviously Boogie Basham kicking in as well. So kind of what's your preferred defensive end rotation here, Merekat? What do you want to see with owing 3 defensive tackles, but really a plethora of DN? So are the Bills expecting to maybe be up and not have to worry about the run? I mean, it's kind of interesting that they didn't make Brandon Bryant active.
Yeah, elevating him and then not making him active, a bit weird. And you brought it up. I think we're going to see just that with Harrison Phillips being the early down one tech type of guy next to Ed, kind of eat the blockers if he can, and then let Ed eat along the defensive line, maybe get after it in the pass rush. And then Vernon Butler comes in the later downs because you're not going to want Harrison Phillips on the field all 3 downs. I think we get a lot of Ed Oliver is the only consistent defensive tackle, but some of these guys, we have Boogie Basham, Greg Rousseau, have experience along the defensive line. Greg Rousseau I know it was college at Miami, but still, he got all of his sacks before he took a year off in college at the one tackle interior defensive line. Not that he is a defensive tackle in the NFL, but he's a guy you might be able to move inside if you need to. But Brandon Bryan activation, they're probably not afraid of the Jets running too much. We've seen it when they have Mike White healthy. They throw a lot.
Yeah, and you see right here, Merekat, like from the breakdown of the roster, you see 9 defensive linemen, only 3 of those are defensive tackles, 6 defensive end rotation today. You have Cam Lewis inactive, which I thought with all the injuries you could see him go, but apparently with the special teams injuries, you need more there on the special team front. Without Jake Kumaro, you definitely need to make room for receivers. But they're only activating 5. So really special teams is taking a hit. You're going to take AJ Klein off the special teams as well. It's an interesting game day lineup, one that, there could be some lapses on players that, coming into before last week, they had made 0 roster moves. Did you know that? Before last week, they had made 0 roster moves on that, beside elevating an occasional player from the practice squad. They made no moves to the active roster. Now today's a lot different, finally caught up to them, but they do get Dawson Knox back. The offensive line should be in better shape. You would expect the offense to almost be full strength with all the news of, really none of the injuries, and no one's sitting out except Tremaine Edmonds. So Merekat, when you look at the whole roster here, we see Cam Lewis inactive as talked about. Tremaine Edmonds obviously inactive. Jamil Douglas, backup offensive lineman. Brandon Bryan still interesting, but he's inactive. What sticks out to you? 5 receivers for the first time that sticks out to you? Is it, Matt Breida being active? Does that stick out to you? Matt Breida over Cam Lewis? Like that's an interesting move there to have another, really quote unquote 5th running back.
Yeah, getting Breida up this week makes sense because Zach Moss limited in practice throughout the week, wearing the red no-contact jersey for most of it. Had to clear that concussion protocol. Believe he was just cleared yesterday. So it's not a week where you're going to want to see Zach Moss out on the field a lot, I guess, even though it's a game where we should run the ball a decent amount if we take the lead. Zach Moss is usually that running back when we have the lead because after Devin Singletary's 4 fumbles in the first few games, they stopped really trusting him in that role to close out games. So Zach Moss has been closing them out, but coming off that injury, you don't want to trust him. Matt Breida could be that guy also on third down situations, even though they've been throwing a decent amount to Singletary recently as well. What really sticks out to me is honestly a tight end. They're still just going with 2 tight ends because Dawson Knox, you saw that picture of him getting on the plane yesterday?
Yep.
That hand does not look ready to catch Josh Allen thrown footballs right now. It is blown up like the Michelin Man.
What does that tell you?
I'm not saying we don't see Knox on the field a lot, but I don't think we see him in many blocking situations. I think he's more of a decoy than anything. Not saying Sweeney's not a fine blocker, but going with Knox, I don't know if he's going to be a threat. I don't, feel like this coaching staff is one that would rush players back from an injury. But in the situation that we have at tight end right now, where they didn't put Knox on the IR and stuff, they're like, if he feels like he's good to go, they're going to let him go. But how effective can he be if his hand is that bad, both blocking and catching the football? Because like I said, Josh Allen throws the football really fast and really hard. Taking one of those to your hand, it's that puffy, it's not fully healed. It's not going to feel good for you. And then, your effectiveness as a blocker. So then you're kind of relying just on Tommy Sweeney. If something happens to Dawson Knox, no other tight end ready to go. I guess Reggie Gilliam would step up into that role. It could be a decent option at blocking tight end for us, but it's a little suspect.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about. I've been thinking about the scenarios after seeing the hand pictures of why would he be active today, and you're thinking in your head he's got to on a pass routing going on in his routes he has to be a decoy, like just straight up. I would think that maybe if he's left wide open. They can toss one to him. He can make a soft catch in certain short situations, Merekat. It's the blocking that's interesting to me. Like, if he's in the game, he's going to have to block. And the Bills probably feel comfortable with him enough at that. So maybe he's in for pass sets to give a chip block and then kind of just going out on a quick flat route. Kind of more of a safety valve today for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
I don't see any crazy, post routes. But maybe with padding, they fire up and they feel like, hey, yeah, it's a little puffy. Like, we've had it looked at a bunch. Like, he's been out a bunch. He's feeling good. It doesn't overly hurt. Maybe there's no like real big risk of re-injury. Maybe all of that, and they're like, maybe they fire up at least 75%. I mean, I would expect there would have been a number that was like, Quentin Morris and then Dawson Knox at 75%. I don't know what that percentage number would have been, but he had to have just hit it. Like, hey, even him at 75%, he can't do a couple of things. Maybe they feel comfortable with him with driving, helping drive a defensive end into the ground or something. We've seen other injuries in the past with offensive linemen. So, we'll see. I'm very interested to see if he's a decoy, if he's in on blocking downs, and see if he's running his full complement of route tree. Those are very interesting situations to where the Bills have said, like, hey, we can have 4 or 5 options out there. Dawson could be one of them. Maybe they jump to Dawson is what they want. And then they're seeing Emmanuel Sanders open, Cole Beasley open, some situations like that. That's kind of what I'm expecting today from Dawson Knox. But if they leave him wide, or the reverse, if they leave him right open, I'm assuming he's okay enough to make a catch. And that's what the Bills are thinking. Like, hey, if they have to cover Dawson, great. We have all our other options. That's what we're hoping for. However, if they're like, yeah, he's not going to do anything, maybe he has a Dawson Knox game because people think he's a decoy and he's standing there wide open and he is healthy enough to catch it. So it is something to watch out for. We heard from Tyson from Let's Talk Jets here this week. Great guest, really broke down the Jets nicely for us. There is a lot of hope for Mike White. What are you feeling today? There's a lot of buzz around him. There's quarterbacks out all over the league. You have Kyler Murray out. You have Ben Roethlisberger out. I mean, could be worse than having Mike White out there for the Jets today. What's your opinion of that? And how do you play him? Do you get after him? Do you drop into zones? Like, what do you think you should do against Mike White? And what do you think McDermott will do?
I think you have to get after him because Mike White's shown, the past few weeks, he is at least a competent NFL quarterback, and the Jets do have a good array of weapons that are healthy now to utilize for a guy who can throw the ball 30 to 40 times a game, no problem. So I think you really have to get after him, though. He's still young. He's still inexperienced. It's still the New York Jets with that banged-up offensive line that Tyson's was, quote, not a fan of at all. And you saw Mike White last week take a hit, go out for the rest of the game in a situation where he probably could have gone, say he needed to, and it shows he's a guy who might be a little easily shook. And Jets line, not great. The Bills now with this, lack of defensive line depth all of the sudden in the past 48 hours, have an abundance of defensive ends to utilize. So you're going to want to see those guys kind of carry the weight for the defensive line there. Just let the defensive tackles get their rotations off and try not to wear them down while the DNs carry the burden of the line's duty today to get something going against a bad Jets offensive line.
Yeah, you got LaMichael Pirine out today, guy we talked about on the show. He's out. He's inactive. So they will see the return of Tevin Coleman here. So that's just a disappointing draft choice for them. But, they'll live with it. 4th-round picks. They make their decisions there. So no LaMichael Pirine. You'll see a lot of Michael Carter and Tevin Coleman now. Ty Johnson they like a lot too. And Nick Bowden, a guy that they play as kind of an H-back role. You got your wish. Kenny Yeboah is active today. You got to be pretty happy about that. They brought like 4 guys from the practice squad. A couple defensive linemen also inactive today for the Jets. You've got Jonathan Marshall and Tim Ward. Couple of just rotational guys that they have there at the back end of their roster. Marshall was a 6th-round pick. Still not the strongest position on the team, but the Jets defensive line isn't horrible. It is serviceable. Zach Wilson's obviously inactive today, and offensive lineman Isaiah Williams and Elijah Riley at the safety position, which is interesting because I thought they would need all the safeties that they can get, defensive backs there. So they're pretty weak in the safety spot here today, Merekat. Let's flip it to the defensive side of the ball for the Jets. And for as much as you could see some positives of the offense, if that's crazy to say, with Carter, potentially some of those receivers, whatever Mike White is, an offensive line that's up and down, we'll call it. But on the Jets' defensive side, I mean, that's brutal. As Tyson was telling us, it's one of the worst that they've ever had, breaking historic Jets records in a lot of ways with Robert Saleh, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
The defensive backs, without Marcus May, look terrible, look really beat up. CJ Mosley's having a down year. Jonathan Franklin Myers is an okay player. Really, the only Quinnen Williams are really the only players on that defense that are at all any solid. I don't even think they can run the Jags game plan last week of what they tried to do to get pressure, especially with a little bit better of a Bills offensive line today. So what's the keys to getting to the Jets defense? I mean, you got to get after that back seven. It's just not that the front four is great. It's okay. But that back seven is brutal. Like, you got to get after it. Like, you got to find the short passes. You got to find deep routes. Like, they're going to have safety communication errors all day. The DB and the quarterbacks aren't going to make up for it. Like, talk to me about that, Merekat. And the Bills offense now, how do they get back on track against, a defense, at least at this stage of this season, isn't very good?
Yeah, so the front four worries me a little bit because we call the Jets the offensive line up and down. So is the Bills. You saw it last week with the Jags, and they do have some guys who can get after the quarterback a little bit. Nothing to be terrified of, but with our recent play, you can't really trust them against anybody at this point till they prove us otherwise. But you hit the nail on the head. You got to abuse that back seven. The only guy there who's, could potentially cause us troubles is Mosley, because when the Jets, kept it close with the Bills previous years, he was always in the middle of that, always going off, causing Josh Allen, fits here and there. But he's trended downwards along with that whole defense. Robert Saleh, no idea what he's doing with them. So Josh Allen's got to get after it. He's got to take advantage of their bad play with his elite receiving core early and often. I don't want to see the Bills start out with, this weird Brian Dable play calling we've seen recently, go 3 and out the first few drives. I don't want to see punts. I don't want to see a field goal. I want to see a touchdown early for this team. First quarter, maybe first drive. These guys need to get after it, and the way to do that is the back seven, throwing it through the air, taking advantage of that middle of the field, especially deep crossing routes and such. That's what you got to do today to just bury these Jets and get this offense back on track.
And on the road, we figured it out the hard way. The Bills have been generally pretty good on the road for the most part up until really last week. I mean, they've been pretty good on the road. The Titans game they lost to, but they were good. Like for most part, that offense was good. I liked what they had to do. Like they carried the day. More importantly, the Bills' offense is usually pretty good on the road. If you go back even through last year, it was really good. You look at that San Francisco game. They played well in New England as compared to at home against New England against the Cam Newton fumble game. They played really well on the road. And I think Josh Allen kind of has always liked that in his career. That's why last week was even more of a stunner. Not that a 9-6 in Buffalo against the Jags would have been something to be expected. But I do think the team plays exceptionally well under Allen on the road. They went in his back to his rookie year, went into Minnesota, a pretty good team at the time, and just buried him. So he's always been a good road quarterback. I always will take his road statistics. I do think he gets a little bit jittery at home occasionally with the fans, with the energy at times. He's gotten better at that. So I just do not foresee a situation where the Jets can win today scoring under 24 points, Merekat. There's just a zero situation today. The Jaguars got that game. And maybe, hopefully, will be the only time that happens where a team can score under 14 and win. Like the Steelers game was a little worrisome too. So can the Jets defense get it done today, Merekat? Can they do what the Jags? I'm going to blanket statement to you. Can they do what the Jags did? Can they get it done with a potentially better Bills offensive, not great, better Bills offensive line with Cody Ford on the bench?
No, I don't think so. I think the Bills are putting up 30 points today. Like I said, I think anything less than 4 touchdowns out of this offense today against this terrible Jets defense is a disappointment. and you're going to have to start questioning it going forward into harder matchups coming up quick. This is where we need to get things going right, especially in the division. You got to take advantage of them. You got to score a lot of points and start, being a threatening presence again.
Yeah, for sure. They do have, some likable players. I actually like Hamza Nasruddin at their 6th-round pick, who's a safety linebacker combo player who has been playing, occasionally sporadically. We'll see if he gets in today at the injury to Marcus May. So he came in the Colts game late there a little bit. So he was a guy I liked who ended up going in the 6th round. We'll see if we see him at all or if he continues to play limitedly there for them as well. Anything that you see from your end, what is your real key to the game? Is it to spread them out? Like, just give us your final key to the game, Merekat. Is it to just put enough pressure on Mike White that they really can't rebound from it? Is it to just overwhelm them on the offensive side? Like, really put together Merekat's keys to the game and to just suffocate the Jets.
I think it's a combination of both. I think you got to get after him like what you have to make him uncomfortable because you have the opportunity to today. I know Bill Belichick went on his rant like a week ago. Hurries are more important than sacks. Yeah, but I want to see Mike White on the ground today responsibly. Another huge key to this game is this Bills team playing not recklessly. I know a lot of it has been attributed to poor refereeing, but still, there's been a lot of sloppy play out of the team that's supposed to be, perfectly aligned under Sean McDermott. It's been far from that. That's been a problem the past couple years with this team. Is a lot of bad penalties from the offensive line, a lot of, things after the play. We need to clean that up. It needs to be addressed sooner than later because you're not going to win, in the playoffs if you get over 100 yards of penalties a game, which they've been doing recently. So that's a huge part of it. And then, the offense just needs to execute and bury them, starting early. We don't want to see this team sputter out and then, start to question itself and not rebuild its confidence coming off of a stinker against Jacksonville last week. Because the defense was fine last week. It wasn't the best in the world, but it was good. It was just the offense's inability to produce.
Outside of Saran Neal,
confidence.
Outside of Saran Neal, the defense was great.
Yeah.
I'll complain about Levi Wallace because I hate that he plays against bad receivers 10 yards off. I just hate it. It's one thing if he had a matchup against DeAndre Hopkins, or like when he saw, a better match. The only time this season that the freaking Titans have been healthy, with Julio on IR, with Derrick Henry on IR, was against the Bills. So they're the only team that had to worry about that multi-facet Titans offense, but that's a discussion for a different day. I'd like to see him play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage against specifically not great receiver twos. I mean, I don't have anybody but Trey White on Corey Davis today. I'll tell you that right now. Jamison Crowder against Taron Johnson's a great matchup. But then you look at it, no Denzel Mims. You really look at it like he needs to contain Keelan Cole and Elijah Moore. Like that's what Levi. It's not a difficult matchup. Those receivers have a little talent. Elijah Moore could come on his own. But quite frankly, the Corey Davises of the world, I do not want to see a matchup with Corey Davis at any point today. That is not the matchup you want for Levi Wallace. But yeah, to Saran Neal. So he let up some bad plays. I don't even think that the Jags did miss a bunch of field goals, but the majority of their yards all day were targeting him. So that's the funny part. He's not in the game today. The Bills defense is rocking. And then, last point here on the Jets defense is, you look at some of their advanced statistics across, different platforms, and it's just not good outside of some stuff you like about John Franklin Myers, aforementioned. Tim Ward's actually grading out pretty well. If you check out PFF, he's inactive. Outside of that, you don't have a record. That's what I want to say. You don't have Josh Allen. I'm still calling him the other Josh Allen on the other side. You don't have, even, Von Miller. Whatever you want to, whatever way you want to go with that, a Khalil Mack, TJ Watt, like they don't have one of those players. John Franklin Myers is a nice piece. He's a guy I take in my rotation. But outside of that, like Quinnen Williams isn't the player he has been in the past. He's, been kind of pedestrian, to be honest. I don't know what's wrong with, at one point in the season, was that last year where if Mosley didn't go out of the game, like he was wrecking us on his own.
Yeah.
Was that last season, the first game of last season?
Yeah.
Since then, he just hasn't been the same player since that ridiculous game he was playing. He was playing on a Josh Allen game for through 3 quarters. He went on to the game. It's like if Josh Allen went on to the game last week in the end of the third quarter And the Bills are like, yes, like their best players out. Like that's kind of what happened in that week 1 game. That's very similar to that Jags game. And then the Bills just like, threw that touchdown to John Brown and they won and blah, blah, blah. So not a lot of defensive talent. Like, I don't even find a talented Josh Allen type of player, because without Josh Allen last week, the defensive Josh Allen last week, I seriously think he alone is the reason they won. I mean, he was defensive player of the week. So it's very rare to say, but he fits in the category of doing enough on his own to win the game for his team. So that's what it takes to beat a good offense. And you'll see that across the league that, these guys have these great days. They get paid a lot of money and they're talented players too. But the Jets, let's put it all full circle to today and let's get our score predictions in. But the Jets just don't have that player. Sorry. They don't have that player on defense, especially. The Bills are going to score a lot of points. Do they have that player on offense? That's the questionable. Was Mike White? Do we have enough film on him? Without Tremaine Edmonds being out, does that affect Michael Carter enough? Is Corey Davis being healthy? Kevin Coleman, a lot of pieces coming back in the puzzle. Crowder being good enough in situations. He's crushed us. As healthy Crowder can crush us because of the way we play zone defense. He's absolutely crushed us. He makes Taron Johnson look silly. Now, this is a more established and just coming into his own Taron Johnson, but in years past, he has absolutely murdered us in the slot. So that's something to watch. So to me, it's kind of the opposite of last week where it might be an offensive game. It's certainly not going to be a 9-6 game because I just don't see enough on the Jets defense to do anything close to what the Jag were miraculously able to do, Merekat. So final points of the day, give us your score prediction and why, and what do you need to see out of this team at 1:00 today?
So you brought it up, the receiving core for the Jets. Jamison Crowder has crushed us before. I like some of these receivers they have. Tremaine Edmonds being out and the way we run that zone defense, the middle of the field could get abused a bit. So I want to see whoever ends up stepping up. Is it going to be Tyrell Dodson? Is it going to be, Andre Swift, Tyler Merekat? Oh, God, I hope not. But we're going to want to see whoever steps up there in the middle of the field for Tremaine Edmonds to really be effective today and not let anything big hit us. Offense, I've said it 5 times on the show already. Early and often, you got to start scoring on this team. No wasted drives. You don't want to come out of this game leaving points on the field today, especially against the Jets in your own division. I think earlier in the week I said 30-17. I'm upping a little. 33-17 Bills. I think Jets get a little on the back end, little garbage time, late game type of stuff. Nothing crazy.
Okay, fair enough. Forgot to say one quote, though, and then I'll get into my score predictions. So earlier this week, Sean McDermott said, we are, quote unquote, well aware that the referee Scott Novak's crew this week will have called the most penalties by far in the NFL. Definitely needed to get that in here because that came right after our show with Tyson. But interesting day today. It feels like sometimes Merekat, the NFL and or these official crews pick a team and they just say they're committing penalties today. And we think like the Bears, they're committing penalties today. We're going to go with that. Could it be the Bills again today that get picked on? I certainly hope not. Could it be the Jets that get picked on? Possibly. I still don't want to see that. I still want to see a good football game. I'll sign off right now. I would sign off right now, today, right now, this minute, on 3 penalties a team. That's it. I would sign that. I would sign that piece of paper right now. Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah. I would sign that piece of paper that I will take a not call holding from the Jets to make sure we're not getting ticky-tack, taunting penalties, to make sure we're not calling bad pass interferences, things like that. So that is one note I wanted to make sure everyone was well aware that listens to our show. Watch out for penalties. They're going to be bad today. All we can do is hope the Bills are clean enough and that some of those go against the Jets being the underdog and the more undisciplined teams. But the NFL's flipped the script. They've been calling it at times on the better football teams. So, we'll see how this all plays out, but that is a big note. I agree with Merekat. I think it's a very high-scoring game today. I don't see enough on the defensive side of the ball. Missing Edmonds is a big deal. He is the center of our cover 2 defense, our cover 2 zones. Luckily, no tight end. Tyler Kroft could have had a revenge game today. He's out. They don't have much there, as Tyson's told us. So luckily, the Bills look out there, and they still do have a good slot corner who I think has been better than years past when he's had to play the aforementioned Jamison Crowder at times, who's absolutely feasted on us. So I think there'll be some adjustments. Corey Davis will be locked up by Trey White. I think they'll make some adjustments to help out if needed. Johnson in the slot, I think he can handle it on his own, and just make sure Wallace isn't doing his thing where he's letting eight yards up every play. Those things happen. I think the Bills defense could still have a pretty good day. But yeah, right up the middle, you're missing your two biggest defensive key cogs on the running side now. I'm not as worried about the passing side, honestly. On the running side, like, you're missing some important pieces to the run stop, Meerkat. Like, for where I'm not as worried about the defensive passing game, I'm worried about the defensive running game against Michael Carter today. So that's something that they might have to compensate for, throw some run blitzes, and then, yeah, we might see some over the middle stuff. So we'll see which way they go, if they're comfortable giving up a few yards per carry, or if they're going to say, we're just going to shut down your passing game and say, if Michael Carter runs, he runs. Or they're going to say, we're going to come after Michael Carter. You're going to have to beat us in the air. So we're going to see which way they go here today with that, Meerkat. But I have pretty big Bills victory, 35 to 17. I think they get it done. I think it'll be close. My prediction is it's close to the first third of the game, to the first 20 minutes. I'm looking at a 10-3 score, and it being a frustrating day. Like, this hasn't cleaned up, like where Spencer Brown didn't make a difference. I think we're going to hear some of that rumblings. I think that's how it'll kick off, rather than the opposite of being up, 17-0 and kind of being able to relax today. So that's my prediction. I think Mike White does enough to frustrate us. And there'll be times in the game that it's like, don't you tell me this is happening again. So Meerkat, that's what I got. It's been a great show brought to you by Outlet Liquors. What's your outlet? Meerkat, any final notes for the day?
Just go Bills. We need this win. We need a big win after last week. I said it last week. We needed a big win against a punching bag type opponent following a rough one. And now things are just looking worse. People are starting to doubt the Bills. Josh Allen critics seemingly out of the woodwork again with just pure bullshit. I don't even want to deal with it anymore. Just shut them up this week. Win by 2 scores, please.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. You got the Colts on fold, who is a good surging team. You got the Saints, who's kind of going the opposite way, but still should be a good football game on Thursday Night Football. So there are some good teams coming up. You got Tampa in the future. You got whatever this Carolina team is with Cam Newton later on this year. You got the two Patriots games coming up. This is the game you need to take care of. This is what you need to do right now. You have 2 Jets games. You need to take care of them both before you get the entire NFC South, Meerkat. So from Outlet Liquors, from Picasso's Pizza, I'm Kevin, and that's Meerkat. Enjoy the game, and we'll see you soon.